When man worked the garden, it was in partnership with God who was causing the ground to be productive. Man works with God. They understand that. And work is an expression of worship. The problem with our world today, the distinction set between the so-called sacred and secular is a false dichotomy. The sacred and the secular should never mix. Your work is secular. Religion is sacred. The two should never meet. Do you agree with that? The problem with that dichotomy is that that is not the understanding before the Reformation and before the Renaissance. In the 15th century, in the revival of the studies of the Latin and Greek literature, men began to understand that man has been, the pinnacle of achievement and power. And during the Middle Ages, the church dominated all the sciences. The church was the sponsor of all the sciences. So the church controlled all the sciences. You understand that? And that the sciences must submit to the dogma of the church. At that time, the church was influenced by a false belief that the earth was the center of the solar system. But later on, Galileo's discoveries with his telescope began to convince him that it is not so, that rather it is the sun that is the center of the solar system. Because at that time, his findings did not agree with the belief of the church. He was called to a diet and was commanded to recant his views or be excommunicated as a heretic. And because Galileo was such a devout follower of the church, he recanted his beliefs. But his students who studied his findings continued on his research, and they came to a point that they discovered that Galileo was absolutely, we have enough evidence to prove that the sun, not the earth, is the center of the solar system, and that started what is called the scientific revolution. Gradually, science and faith began to divorce from one another. Before it was the church above reason, the church about science. Later on, science started to divorce itself from the church and establish its new authority, no longer as dogma, but as reason. Becomes the final authority. That is the time when the dichotomy developed between the sacred and the so-called secular. Do you understand that? The problem with that dichotomy is that that is not true. Because everything is owned by God, everything is sacred. Your business is sacred. The resources you use come from divine creation. The talents, the abilities that you have come from God as gifts to you. Every human being born in this world is born with some talent. No one is born without one. And if you think you never had a talent, it's sad to say to you, you just haven't discovered it yet.